storm breaks, we turn it on. Top stories coming fast and strong. From the map to your front door, what matters most, we bring you more. Stay with us, stay in the loop. Straight talk, clear view, one place for the story, one voice for the truth. Patriot Nation News, PNN, we bring it through. Patriot Nation News, what you need right now for you. Patriot Nation News, hear it loud, clean and true. PNN, PNN, Patriot Nation News. Voices rise, the facts roll in. Every angle, every win. City halls and highway miles. Real lives, real news, real time. Stay with us, stay in the loop. Straight talk, clear view, one place for the story, one voice for the truth. Patriot Nation News, PNN, we bring it through. Patriot Nation News, what you need right now for you. Patriot Nation News, hear it loud, clean and true. PNN, PNN, Patriot Nation News. When the day gets loud, we cut through the crowd. When the feed runs wild, we keep it straight and style. Patriot Nation News, PNN, we bring it through. Patriot Nation News, what you need right now for you. Patriot Nation News, hear it loud, clean and true. PNN, PNN, Patriot Nation News. Patriot Nation News.
Oh, yeah.
See you next time.
And it's good to be here, Dave, the Cornbread Man, PNN News, Patriot Nation News, or PNN. We're glad to be here. Took the holiday off. We did a little bit of streaming, but we did take the holiday off. Good to see you tonight as we near the end of May. In fact, we only have a few days left, May 26th, 9:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Been keeping up with the news, of course, over the weekend. A lot of news about, of course, the tragic death of Kyle Busch. So that really grabbed the sports world as well as the racing world. Big racing on Sunday with the Indianapolis 500 and the Coca-Cola 600. Fascinating races, a lot of rain across the nation, as we've seen. Ongoing NBA playoffs with the New York Knicks. We're going to the big show, and we'll see how that handles. It's a big deal for them. I mean, absolutely a big deal. And baseball is going on as well as some other sports. Also over the weekend, there were talks about maybe a possible deal. I honestly have never thought that we were close to a deal. I thought that was wishful thinking. I think the command structure inside of Iran is discombobulated at best. It is said that the leader is in a hidden location with only some couriers knowing even how to get to him. And it takes a long time to get information flowing back and forth. One thing is, though, we know that Iran does play these games, and I've never thought that they were going to be truthful about a deal. They're going to push this further, and tonight or this week, there is not a deal, and there is ongoing talks about whether how close to where the president said close, but it didn't seem to be the case. Of course, the information could be scattered on both sides. We could be getting varying degrees of information from different sources. The president convening a Camp David cabinet meeting and then shifting that to the White House, as we did use some, as they said, self-defense attacks on launchers and or some of the fast boats, and some of the things that are going on. Iran, for their part, has vowed retaliation and said that we have broken the ceasefire. Pardon me. So there's a lot of options on the table. In an article in Newsmax, experts see several options. Tehran is threatening this retaliation. Of course, they have continued to fire on other people as well as us. But the Foreign Ministry described the strikes as wholly unprovoked, illegal, and illegitimate, and has warned its response will continue as long as it considers itself under attack. According to compiled reporting on official Iranian statements and regional coverage of the escalation, the warning follows U.S. strikes on Iranian missile and naval infrastructure near the Strait of Hormuz, which U.S. officials say are aimed at deterring, according to Newsmax, this article, threats to American forces in protecting commercial shipping lanes. So there's a lot of things that they can do. They can, including, the naval capabilities, basically the fast boats that they can get out, do some attacks. Of course, drone and some missile could be at risk because of those flights that can be fired into ships. There's been very few that have passed through the strait because they didn't want to lose their cargo and or ships, which is understandable. So there are U.S. forces on the ground in a number of places: Iraq, Syria, and Saudi Arabia. There's many places they could hit and strike at. So there is something to be paying attention to, and obviously the United States military and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth will be looking at all these things. So to watch what they may do or what this might lead to. Of course, I don't think anybody wants to see an escalation, but at some point it has to escalate. You would think that it really would, due to the expense of it and needing those lanes opened up, and then as the president calls it, nuclear dust, quote unquote. So we'll see what happens with that. Iran is also seeking the release of $24 billion in the U.S. deal. Well, you got to put up to get, and that may be an opportunity there. But until they do, that's not going to happen. There's an article that Canada helped U.S. citizens flee UAE amid Iran attacks, as the missile strikes and embassy closures rattled the Gulf during the opening days of Operation Epic Fury. The United States quietly turned to Canada for help evacuating stranded Americans from UAE. Semaphore reported on today, U.S. diplomatic facilities shuttered and consular operations disrupted. Amid those, there were actually some kind of help from the Canadian embassy, and they served as a pickup point for newly issued and renewed U.S. passports, according to senior State Department officials who spoke to Semaphore. So, that's good. Our allies should work together with us as we would them. So, this was early on. It's already had happened. Let's see. They're also wanting, big news tonight is the White House is pushing non-disclosure agreements for federal employees after leaks have been allowed to happen about Iran and Venezuela. So the administration is moving to require all current and future federal employees to sign a non-disclosure agreement as part of a broader effort to tighten controls on leaks of non-public government information. Now, these are signed by many times even companies to protect their assets and their trademarks and things like that, research and development and so forth. The proposed notice posted today at the Office of Personnel Management website, expected to be published in the Federal Register, seeks public comment on a draft non-disclosure agreement that could apply to both new and existing employees across federal agencies. The form is intended to document employees' acknowledgement of existing legal obligations to protect confidential, proprietary, and otherwise non-public information obtained through their official duties while preserving lawful whistleblower protections. It also asks agencies to weigh whether the NDA should apply only to unclassified material and what penalties should apply to employees who refuse to sign. The OPM said it's responding in part to what it described as several recent instances of unauthorized disclosures involving internal agency communication related to rulemaking and policy development. The notice specifically cited cases in which FBI and Department of Homeland Security personnel allegedly disclosed details about planned immigration enforcement actions without authorizations, which they should be in trouble. Everybody knows that those things are, we become the era where everybody runs their mouth and thinks that there's some sort of doing some sort of heroic act. You are breaking the law and you are putting people in danger sometimes with these actions. So they're intensifying their crackdown on leaks, including high-profile disclosures involving national security and military operations, which by far should be off limits to any kind of information. And all administrations have had trouble with this. I don't blame them for that. So the media gets a hold of that, then it flies in the face and things get reported, and that can hurt some of the negotiations that are occurring and could put U.S. military personnel and other diplomats in harm's way, even more so than they are. So if you want to see that, go to Newsmax. There's a rather long article we won't go through, but I thought that was interesting. I know they've been upset about this, but this is pretty common practice for business and things. I don't think that'd be a big problem as long as they do preserve the ability to be a whistleblower. That should be protected. Let's see here. It was an article I looked at a little bit earlier today that let me get this gentleman's name. Christopher Ruddy wrote an article today, or an opinion piece on Newsmax, and he said that the decision to pursue a 60-day ceasefire framework with Iran may prove to be one of the smartest strategic moves yet in the unfolding Middle East crisis. While critics are already rushing to portray the proposal as a concession, the reality is quite different. Based on the details of what have emerged publicly, the agreement appears structured entirely around American and allied leverage while giving Iran a final opportunity to end its nuclear program once and for all, and only then allowed to rejoin the civilized world with its benefits of trade and commerce. Most importantly, the framework immediately addresses one of the gravest threats facing the global economy, the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. This waterway, through which roughly 1/5, we know this, of the world's oil supply travels, has been disrupted. As more than 1,600 commercial vessels have been delayed or rerouted, threatening a destabilized global energy market and disrupt critical shipments of oil, liquefied gas, chemicals, industrial materials, and strategic minerals. The reopening is very, very important. Trump's approach demonstrates an understanding that military power and economic stability must work together. By stabilizing shipping lanes first, the United States immediately reduces pressure on allies in Europe and Asia and the Gulf region while restoring critical energy flows to the global economy. Even more significant is the reported commitment by Iran to end its nuclear weapons program completely and surrender its plutonium stockpiles. If this did occur, this would be major and it would be a win. If Iran follows through, it would mark a historic shift under decades of international concern over Tehran's nuclear ambitions. The framework reportedly provides Iran a pathway towards sanctions relief and the unfreezing of assets if and only if it fully complies. This is not weakness. This is leverage. President Trump is effectively saying to Iran, the door to normalization is open, but only if you fundamentally change course. And either they will or they won't. I think that's simple enough. America gives up very little under this arrangement. There are no permanent guarantees, no binding concessions, and no surrender of military deterrence. Instead, Iran assumes the burden of proving its intentions over the next 60 days. The arrangement also fundamentally changes the strategic nature of the conflict. Rather than an open-ended regional war, the situation shifts toward what amounts to be a monitored enforcement and verification operation. Iran's behavior can now be measured in real time. thought that was well spoken today. A few other points, but I think that uh, that is important to say because you're really pinning them down. And while we have leverage, we should use that leverage. Absolutely, I think it's good for the world. My opinion. Um, Another bit of information that come out today: Ex-Attorney General Bondi named to White House AI panel. Axios was reporting uh, they are focused on artificial intelligence. It's a committee, an advisory committee, and she has been appointed to that. So some next work for her. Not a lot of information, but nonetheless is there. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that USI's Kenya Ebola quarantine facility, they're expected to deploy U.S. public health officers to Kenya to staff a potential quarantine facility there amid the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The journal reported today the facility, which was pending approval from the Kenyan government as of today, is intended for the Americans who have been exposed or at high risk of testing positive for the virus in the region, as well as those who test positive, citing people familiar with the matter. Some members of the U.S. Public Health Service Commission Corps, a uniform branch of the Department of Health and Human Services, have received notices to deploy. The White House and HHS did not immediately respond to requests for comment. The move comes as health authorities race to contain a fast-growing outbreak of a rare Ebola strain in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Uganda. Early on Tuesday, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention asked staff to volunteer for urgent deployment to support Ebola screenings at the country's entry points, according to an email seen by Reuters. To date, no cases of Ebola disease have been confirmed in the U.S., and the risk to the general public remains low, the CDC says. In Congo, there have been 906 suspected cases, including 105 confirmed, with 223 suspected deaths and 10 confirmed fatalities. CDC's latest data showed Uganda has reported 7 cases confirmed and 1 death, with most infections linked to the initial cases. So this definitely has the attention of the world. Regional, you don't want it to explode. NASA lays out its moon base plans. Anybody ready to go to the moon base? NASA's already ordering landers, rovers, and drones for a sprawling moon base. Less than 2 months after the Artemis 2's record-breaking lunar fly-around. The first phase of its moon base plans were outlined today, awarding hundreds of millions of dollars in contracts to 4 U.S. companies. Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin will provide a pair of landers to deliver moon buggies to the lunar surface at a spot near the moon's south pole. Interesting. These so-called lunar terrain vehicles will be built by Astrolab and Lunar Outpost. Firefly Aerospace, which landed successfully on the moon last year, will deliver the first drones to the moon. All this hardware is ideally supposed to arrive before the first Artemis astronauts land on the moon, planned for as early as 2028. That would be must-see TV if you believe that they went. I'm so sorry, I'm congested. Some do not believe that, but I love watching it, and I do believe they went, so we'll see. Let's see. The Artemis 3 is scheduled for mid-27, with a landing by 2 astronauts following as soon as 28. The moon base's second phase from 2009 into the 2030s will start building, or 2029, excuse me, 2029 into the early 2030s, will start building up the permanent infrastructure, including a power grid. As for when the base will be ready to support astronauts for extended periods in specialized permanent habitats, that's expected in the 2030s during the third phase. That's not that far away. Then we'll be able to say, hey, we're permanently here and we're not giving it up, said NASA's moon base program executive Carlos Garcia Galen. Garcia Galen envisions a moon base sprawling over hundreds of square miles, with the perimeter marked by drones dubbed Moonfall, stationed at the corners. Isaacman said these territory markers are meant to be respectful of other countries spacecraft and equipment that might be nearby. He expects reciprocity in the matter. I can see it now. The moon war. Can you just see that? The goal of the moon base is to encourage a lunar economy while conducting scientific research and laying the foundation for, yes, a Mars expedition. For those waiting patiently, the grand return is close at hand and we will not slow down. We are really just getting started. The moon base. All the sci-fi movies, somewhat coming true. At least elements of it. And then a possible Mars expedition. What else here? The president went to there's a lot of talk about his health. He said that his results were terrific and he's healthy. There were concerns about swelling in the legs and ankles and hands and bruising that was seen. He is of the age where you would see some of those things happen. And I think pretty well for his age. He's been found to be in really good health. I mean, at that age, you're going to have some things wrong. Everybody would. But I've got friends that contact me and say that they think that he's lost the mental capacity to lead and needs to be removed. But when you see him in action, if you really watch that, he's very sharp. He's always more prepared than anybody in the room. He knows exactly what he wants. And even though he may say it in ways that are different than a lot of people, he's very gifted in the area of the agreement, the deal. And he knows how to read the room really, really well, I would think. That's not to say that there couldn't be, I mean, at 79, it could be slippage, but nothing to the level that we saw before when nobody seemed to even want to talk about it. My opinion again. Let's see what else went on. I want to shift over to the Gateway Pundit for a couple of stories. Yes, and this I may just go on over. Texas and their primaries. The RNC co-chair, Texas will stay red in November is the headline. And in one of those who lost was, I call him the stick man, Mr. Al Green. He has lost his primary. He is going to be booted from his seat after more than 20 years in Congress. He lost the Texas House seat District 18 primary runoff today, or this evening, rather, to 37-year-old Christian Menifee. The 78-year-old Democrat was booted from his seat after more than 2 decades in Congress. Remember how he waved the cane or the stick or whatever, I call him stick man. So he is expected to win. This Christian Menifee is a Democrat, but Mr. Green, will not be in that seat. Menifee is a 37-year-old lawmaker who won a special election to fill the remainder of the late Representative Sylvester Turner's, also Democrat, Texas, seat in January. He's almost certain to win the general election this fall in a district that Cook Political Reports rates as a solidly Democratic. Neither Menifee nor Green, 78, who served in the White House for over 20 years, pushed past the 50% support needed in the March 3rd primary to avoid a runoff. The two lawmakers were pitted against each other after Texas Republicans advanced a GOP-friendly map that created multiple new pickup opportunities for the party ahead of the midterms. So anyway, he has lost. We will see who officially gets that in the fall, but he will not be there. I don't think that too many will be upset about that, even the Democratic Party. Obviously, I think he'd become an embarrassment for them. At his age as well, maybe he's starting to get some new folks, but I don't think that it will be. I don't think that'll be a problem. Also in Texas, Ken Paxton smoked John Cornyn, who some call the Rhino, within 1 hour of the polls closing, and President Trump has responded. As of this article, which was about 50% of the expected votes, with 832,000 remaining, Ken Paxton had a commanding 62.6% versus 37.4% lead. That translates to over 500,000 votes for Paxton, a little over 300,000 for John Cornyn, the incumbent. So Paxton, this has been a heavily contested seat. Remember, way back when we had the candidate who was originally from California and Texas and was running for that seat. There's a lot of people running for it. It's been getting dwindled down, and this has happened. So at 9 p.m., this was updated. The decision desk projected Ken Paxton as the winner, unseating the Rhino John Cornyn minutes after 9 p.m. Paxton was leading by more than 25 points, with roughly, as I said, 50% of the vote coming in. President Trump boasted the massive win with a graphic declaring victory on Truth Social that simply showed a picture of them and the Republican nominee for U.S. Senator from Texas, Ken Paxton, wins. And we will see if we can't just put that on the screen. And this is that post. And there it is, the president saying Ken Paxton wins, endorsed by President Trump. That's one of his favorite looks. He likes to use that look that they captured. And I get some people get mad when I post things on Truth or from Truth that the president posts, but it's presidential news. I don't even put an opinion piece with it, and people get mad, especially about Iran. But I'm not praising Ken Paxton. But a lot of people did want to see John Cornyn leave. This was the biggest one, beside governor. This was the one that everybody was targeting and was looking at. So anyway, the president had that to say. And I tell you, while we're here, we'll see if there's an update from the president. Isn't it amazing that you get these, and now it's not wanting me to have to sign in, so I may have to wait and get that because it's making me re-sign in. I'm not going to do that. So anyway, I just think that's funny, and we'll look at that later. But I do like to look at those sometime and see what the president has said. And so he said he was happy he won. And, the president, although there has been some slippage maybe in some areas on his nominees, on who is recommended, gave him that, that vote of confidence and whatever, he's won out pretty well. I mean, he's done pretty well in this area. So it continues. Representative Comer to Newsmax, baby farms expose birth tourism crisis. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer, Republican, Kentucky, the great state of Kentucky, told the Newsmax on Tuesday that a congressional investigation into birth tourism businesses exposing what he described as a much larger problem than lawmakers previously realized. Speaking on Carl Higbee's Frontline, he pointed to an investigation launched by Representative Brandon Gill, Republican, Texas, chairman of the Oversight Task Force on Defending Constitutional Rights, about this idea of traveling to the United States just to have children to obtain U.S. citizenship. Sorry, my background. I wondered why that was acting up. Maybe all the storms we've had. We've had a lot of storms here. We'll see if we'll get that back up. Not that it's that important. It's just not, but it bugs me. So we'll see. We'll see if we can get that back up. A quote, I think the work that Brandon Gill is going to do on our own new task force for the Oversight Committee is going to highlight this. And this is going to give credibility to what President Trump is wanting to do to end birthright citizenship. The comments came after host, Carl Higbee highlighted a Florida-based company called, quote, Have My Baby in Miami, end quote, which advertises services for foreign mothers seeking to deliver children in the United States. The host said that the company claims that more than 2,000 foreigners have paid for assistance traveling to the U.S. to give birth. He says the practice has existed for years, but recently gained renewed attention. We have baby farms in several cities in the United States. This has been going on for decades. I'll be honest, I didn't know the extent of it until Peter Schweizer wrote a book specifically about this very recently, he said. Now that we are starting to looking into it, I mean, it's unbelievable, Comer added. We're talking about thousands of babies have been born. Last week, Comer and Gill announced an investigation into 4 businesses accusing of profiting from birth tourism, including Have My Baby in Miami, also Doctores Para T, and also International Maternity Services, and Dr. Athea Javid, an OBGYN practice. In letters to the companies, lawmakers requested records related to marketing, clientele, and fees connected to childbirth packages. According to the Oversight Committee, this is astounding. A 2020 analysis by the Center for Immigration Studies estimated nearly 26,000 babies were born annually to women on tourist visas, and a more recent estimate placed the number at roughly 70,000 births tied to the temporary visas or visitors, in 2023. Comer also raised concerns about foreign nationals exploiting immigration laws. Many of these people, I would say most of these people, are from China. This is a way in for a lot of people that would never be granted citizenship. So it's a huge problem. And this has been one the president has been trying to work on, absolutely. And it's not always obviously worked, but he has been trying to do that. And so we will see. I do like the fact they're beginning to look into it. And once if you got nothing to hide, then there should be no problem. If you have something to hide, then it needs to be looked at, and exposed and dealt with. And I would say that, but it is a detriment to the country. And a lot of people don't agree with that, but I stand on it because it is a way and it's a pathway and it's abused. Rick Santorum said Texas won't go blue in 26 due largely the Democratic candidate from Pennsylvania. Excuse me, I read that wrong. Texas will not turn blue in this year's U.S. Senate race due largely to the Democratic candidate, former Pennsylvania Republican Senator Rick Santorum, told Newsmax on Tuesday. This race of Kim Paxton and John Cornyn, he said, while acknowledging that Texas remains competitive, and it does, it's close races. Santorum said Democrats likely chose the wrong nominee to capitalize on any favorable political climate. I think there's very little likelihood because of the candidate. Texas is not a ruby red state, but it's not a swing state either. Former Trump administration advisor T.W. Shannon also dismissed speculation that Democrats could flip Texas in November. They've been predicting the demise of Texas going blue ever since Texas became red. There's also talk about Georgia, by the way. Said Shannon, who blasted Democrat candidate James Rico as radical, out of touch, and far removed from Texas values. This is a guy that has mocked Jesus. He represents really the East and West Coast more than he does the heartland of Texas. Shannon also claimed Talrico is the left of Jasmine Crockett, to the left of Jasmine Crockett. That's a statement in itself, and warned that Texas voters would reject what he described as far left agenda. The president's endorsement of Paxton, the GOP runoff, has shaped the race and further demonstrated Trump's continued dominance inside the Republican Party. Santorum argued Trump weighed in only after internal polling showed Paxton with a substantial lead over Cornyn, though. Trump likes to be with winners, quote unquote, adding that the president's endorsement appeared to have effectively sealed the race for the conservative attorney general. So anyway, there you go. T for Texas. It's not going blue. Paxton himself says that I fared better against Talrico than Cornyn. He does not believe that there's any kind of issue in the polling. He believes it's actually favorable to him. He told Newsmax that Senator John Cornyn's claim that Paxton cannot win a general election is a made-up talking point, arguing there is no polling data showing the Republican senator would fare better against Democratic James Talrico in November. Cornyn, which he's lost now. If you have nothing to run on, which in 42 years, he doesn't have any accomplishments that he can tout. All he has is siding with former President Joe Biden, restricting Second Amendment rights and fighting President Donald Trump on the border well over a decade, which now we know Cornyn has lost. So he will be going against him. So anyway, they get feisty in Texas. Absolutely. Let's see here. All right. Let me go over to the Gateway Pundit back over. Let me pull up the one article. There's a couple other things I wanted to address. Um, there was another explosion. We had one in the area as well, but there was a massive explosion in Washington State this afternoon. There are multiple people killed and injured in a major chemical explosion at a paper mill in Washington State. The tank containing white liquor exploded in the Pond Denawe Packaging Company in Longview. They produce a dry market pulp that becomes printing paper, tissue, pet pads, filtration paper, and more. According to the company's website, at least 9 people are injured, including one firefighter. It is unclear how many people perished in the chemical blast. Authorities said an unknown number of people are missing. So anyway, it's a hazardous waste, obviously, situation. And we had one in the area, although no one was hurt. And then we know this massive one that happened in Tennessee some months ago, or maybe even close to a year now, where they just obliterated. This has happened quite a bit. There's been a lot of explosions. So they're in trying to recover remains. That's horrible. So that happened today. Let's see here. Vice President J.D. Vance said today that the White House Anti-Fraud Task Force has identified tens of billions in fraud, at least $135 billion stolen since COVID. He spoke at an anti-fraud roundtable with State Attorney General and White House officials. His team has identified staggering amounts of fraud totaling tens of billions of dollars. I just want to get to the main gist of it. We exposed billions of dollars in benefits that have been stolen from the American people, revealing the following: over $22 billion in fraudulent small business loans. Well, we know that has happened a lot. I've even seen that happen locally many years ago. Those things not being done right. More than $1.3 billion in fraudulent Medicaid reimbursements. I'm actually surprised it's not more, to be honest. $6.3 billion in suspected fraudulent government contracts. Yeah. And $60 million in student aid fraud. President Vance, quote, "One of the things we've realized in combating fraud is the resources of the federal government, while vast, can be supplemented and aided by a lot of people who know best what's happening in their states," which is the attorneys general represented here today. And they have a lot of legal resources. They have a lot of prosecutorial resources. And of course, they have the desire to prevent fraud as much as we do. And so I appreciate these leaders for being here, because we're going to work together, state and federal government, to try and combat fraud. There's some other comments, we won't go to them. But we do need to get a handle on this. There's all these NGOs. There's a lot of people getting in the cookie jar, and where's all this money going? There's many times no traceability. He also said, I think the theme here of the anti-fraud task force up to this point has really been what we're protecting the two classes of victims here: the American taxpayer, who shouldn't have their money stolen by fraudsters, and of course we're protecting the people who need the services. Fraud is not a victimless crime. This is not somebody who gets to make some money for violating the law, and otherwise it's not a big deal. This is people who rely on critical services, students who rely on student loan services, sick people who rely on hospice care, a number of small businesses who rely on the availability of these loans so that they can grow their business and hire people. All these people, all of our fellow Americans, have been taken advantage of by fraudsters. And the task force is here to stop it. Amen. They told a horrifying story about how a fraudster effectively killed a man, neglecting his duties as a Medicaid reimbursement caretaker while getting rich off the reimbursements. The victim lived his final moments on this earth neglected, while a fraudster got rich by providing services that he never actually provided. That's sickening, and we know what happens. And I do hope that they can can get. I mean, that's horrible. We just know. I mean, our veterans, senior citizens, services that people want to go get. There's nothing for them. These really good people, good Americans, that just need legit. There's nothing there for them, and then we got people stealing that. Horrible. In Sydney, 90 drones fall from the sky after malfunction disrupts the Sydney Winter Light Show. Well, there is always that. I wonder if somebody jammed them. I don't know if they did that or not, but a malfunction. So 90 drones fell from the sky. I hope nobody was looking right about. I hope they weren't over people. I would hope so. They do these close quarter flies. They were doing the American flag the other night. It was waving at one of the events. And I thought, what if one goes crazy and just starts falling into each other? Well, apparently that happened. So, Congressman Tim Burchett, I've been watching some of his stuff in Tennessee, and he announced today, I'm not even going to show that picture because I'd probably get checked for it, but it was posted by the Gateway Pundit if you would like to see it, by Cassandra McDonald. He's a Tennessee Republican. Tim Burchett is calling for the return of hanging as a federal prosecution or execution method in response to one of the most depraved crimes in recent memory, the months-long torture, rape, and murder of 19-year-old Isabella Stroup in Charlotte, North Carolina. In his ex-post on Sunday, Burchett directly quoted a detailed account of Stroup's horrific death and asserted, quote, "I have a bill to bring back hanging. Let's see if all the tough talk by Congress holds up. Support what they call, or he's calling, DROP Act, the DROP Act." And you can see that on his X as well. A little bit about Isabella Stroup by Matt Von Swoll. She was 19. She loved books. Her family called her Bella. She was tied to a bed with a tow strap and tortured for months in an East Charlotte, North Carolina apartment. Multiple broken bones, stab wounds, and was violated repeatedly, you understand. Her mother said she screamed, and probably some more there. I'll leave it off at that. I think we get the idea. That is horrible. She was found dead in East Charlotte apartment in early May. According to court affidavits and police reports, she had been bound to a bed with a tow strap, wearing minimal clothing and subjected to months of torture inside that residence where she shared with her boyfriend. Police arrested 24-year-old Thomas Kenyon Hamilton on May 5th. He faces charges of first-degree murder and first-degree rape. Hamilton initially called 911, claiming Stroup was not breathing, but investigators uncovered overwhelming evidence of prolonged abuse, including weapons, bloodstained items, and cell phones at the scene. And so Mr. Burchett is calling for that. It's called the DROP Act, which explicitly authorized hanging as a legal method of execution for federal death penalty cases. Hello, broski. Dave is live. I am. Burchett introduced the bill to Congress to confront whether it truly supports tough on crime policies that faced with the most heinous offenders. The congressman, this is Tim Burchett again of Tennessee, has emphasized that certain violent predators, especially those who commit prolonged torture, rape, and murder, do not deserve to live out their days on taxpayer-funded prison sentences. The first recorded hanging in what would become the United States occurred in 1623 when Daniel Frank was executed in the Jamestown colony for cattle theft. In 1630, John Billington became one of the first men hanged in New England after he was convicted of murder. Throughout the colonial era and in the early republic, hanging was the standard, practical, and widely accepted method for crimes ranging from murder and rape to treason. Public executions drew a large crowd as a deterrent, with gallows becoming a familiar fixture in town squares. We see that in movies and TV shows. Until the 1890s, hanging, by the way, the last hanging in the county next to me, I think might have been all the way up into 1934. Somebody killed a law enforcement officer, if I remember correctly. I'm doing good, Brusky. How are you, brother? Hope you had a good day off yesterday, if you were off. So anyway, he is calling for that in this particular case to test what they will do. Public hangings ended after the 1936 execution of Rainey Bethia in Owensboro, Kentucky. The last one open to general spectators. And again, I think it was 1934, 2 years before. The final state level hanging took place on January 25th, 1996, when Billy Bailey was executed by his own choice in Delaware. The last federal hanging occurred decades earlier in 1963, when Victor Feger was put to death in Iowa. Currently, no state actively uses hanging as a primary method or even as a routine secondary method. The DROP Act would restore it as an authorized federal option, returning to a proven centuries-old American tradition of swift and certain justice for the most heinous crimes. And he uses again that case in Charlotte, North Carolina, for Isabella Stroup as the test case on that. So interesting. Yeah, Wolf Nation, baby. Wolf Nation Network. You like the new banner? I'm sure I heard about that case. I'm not as familiar with it, but I know that I'm sure I heard of it. But I don't have a problem with that. I mean, it's something that's done militarily still in the foreign field. I think it should be an option. I don't know that it would ever pass muster with Congress, but I don't have a problem with it at all. So it's a case. Tim Burchett is introducing what he's called the DROP Act. There's no acronym. It's just DROP Act. I mean, it's a case involving. I'm going to show you the picture, but I feel like I would get kicked off of some streams because it shows the news, even though it's just talking about as an option. But I'm not going to show that. You can see that on Gateway Pundit. But the gentleman's name, I say that not because he's a gentleman. He was the boyfriend who tortured Isabella Stroup, and for months, she was 19, but it went on for months long. Torture, rape, murder. What was his name? I said it earlier. Thomas Kenyon Hamilton. He was arrested May 5th in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, by the Charlotte Mecklenburg police. 24 years old. She was 19. He called 911 initially and said she was not breathing, but they later uncovered a lot of, the case in Charlotte, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Well, Tim Burchett in Tennessee is calling for this DROP Act. I don't think it ever passed, but it's interesting. I like watching his ads. I do. I like him. He's very straightforward. I don't know a lot about what he was about, but he's a conservative. But some don't care for him. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But it's a horrible case, and so I didn't see a picture of her, so it could have been. I don't know if it showed a picture of her, but he was, yes. So it's probably the same one, for months, torturing for months. So he is calling for that. So anyway, it was big news tonight. Al Green loses. Ken Paxton's going to win, and then we go to November in Texas. So Texas gets settled up until the fall. We had the big explosion. Was there anything else? Also today, a federal judge today rejected a bid to block Tennessee's new congressional map that eliminates a radically gerrymandered district. Earlier this month, Tennessee Republicans passed a new congressional map that eliminated Democrat Rep. Steve Cohen. I mean, this is the guy that was crying. Oh yeah, I think she is. I think I might have saw they might have had a little video up there, and I do think I remember seeing it. Now, this is the guy who cried. I don't know if you saw this, where he was on one of those liberal news organs. I'm not saying that's what it was, and he was crying. Anyway, a judge has refused to block that. A bid to block it. He's rejected. Tennessee became the 9th state to approve a new congressional map amid the redistricting wars. A judge previously allowed Tennessee's new congressional map to stand. And Tennessee Republicans eliminated Cohen's congressional district after the Supreme Court blockbuster ruling on racial gerrymandering. Last week, Democrat Representative Steve Cohen ended his reelection bid after Tennessee Republicans erased his district with a newly drawn congressional map, and then he cried on the air. He had been in the Senate for more than 2 decades. However, his political career came to an abrupt end after the Tennessee Republicans eliminated his district. U.S. District Judge William Campbell, a Trump appointee, denied a request for a temporary restraining order, TRO, to block the map. The ACLU and ACU of Tennessee filed a lawsuit on behalf of black voters and Memphis-based organizations. The Hill reported a federal judge rejected a challenge to temporarily block a new set of GOP-favored congressional lines in Tennessee on Tuesday, delivering a blow to Democrats who are all but expected to appeal the ruling as they look to undo new GOP redistricting. Let's see here. Nothing much new there. But that's another, they'll continue to do that to, probe the law and see where they can go with that. So, yeah, I hear a lot about the exhaustion, man. I hear a lot about the exhaustion. So, yeah, that's interesting. There was also, I wanted to look up, I just saw a little bit about it, but that's not the one I was looking for. Let's see. I think he made a comment today I wanted to touch on. Let me see if I can find that. Yeah, 9 hours ago. Let's look at, we can, Thomas and Alito gave their dissent. This was also today. As Supreme Court blocks Florida from suing California. Justice Clarence Thomas issued a dissenting opinion followed by federal Justice Samuel Alito as the Supreme Court on Tuesday threw out a Florida lawsuit against California over allegedly issuing commercial truck driver's licenses to undocumented immigrants. Florida launched the lawsuit after a car crash that drew national attention in the state last year when 3 people died in an accident involving a truck driven by an Indian man, Harjinder Singh. The state said Singh did not have legal status in the United States. Remember the story, it was all over the news. And allegedly he was wrongly issued licenses in California and Washington. The truck driver is also facing criminal charges. The dissent draws attention to a broader debate about federalism and state accountability. Florida's lawsuit alleged that California and Washington issued commercial driver's licenses to applicants who failed English proficiency requirements, raising questions about how states comply with federal safety standards. Thomas and Alito's view that the court must hear such cases could reshape how interstate disputes are handled in the future. A majority of the Supreme Court justices ultimately, by the way, Kavanaugh and, where's all these folks at? They declined to grant Florida leave on its to file its complaint. Florida had filed a bill of complaint, a mechanism states use to sue one another directly in the Supreme Court. Justices did not provide an explanation for declining to grant Florida leave in the case. The decision keeps California and Washington's licensing practices in place. Well, we would all think that's a problem, but did not come without opposition on the bench. Thomas authored a dissenting opinion and was joined by Alito. Quote, this court declines to even hear Florida's claims, even though it has nowhere else to bring them. Because I would allow Florida to file its complaint, I respectfully dissent, Thomas wrote in his dissent, which came as part of an orders list released by the Supreme Court on Sunday. Thomas wrote that the court has, quote, exclusive jurisdiction, end quote, in this case, and that he doubts the court has discretion to refuse to hear cases within its exclusive original jurisdiction. He said the court, nonetheless, has adopted a discretionary approach to its exclusive original jurisdiction based on policy judgments. But even under that approach, he said he believes the court should have granted Florida leave because it meets standards of seriousness and dignity, as well as availability of an alternative form in which the issue tendered can be resolved. That wreck was on August the 12th in 2025 on a Florida turnpike. Remember that he tried to do a U-turn, but across the whole medium anyway. It was a horrible thing. I know you've seen that, broski. He the law enforcement learned he was unable to read signs. Now, this is a whole. Listen, you have to be able to at least be able to understand basic traffic laws. I mean, come on. He was unable to read signs and could not answer most questions on an English proficiency test administered by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. He failed his test in both California and Washington, but he was still able to obtain a CDL. Now, how the heck does that happen? He failed both tests in California and Washington, but still got a CDL. How did they not let this move forward and have debate on this? That's wrong. It just allows them to bring it to the court and argue the point. Sean Duffy, Transportation Secretary, issued a rule aimed at preventing foreign drivers from obtaining licenses to drive commercial trucks and buses. This was in February. The department said at least 17 fatal crashes in 2025 were caused by non-domiciled drivers who will now be ineligible to get a license. Quote from Duffy, "For far too long, America has allowed dangerous foreign drivers to abuse our truck licensing systems, wreaking havoc on our roadways. This safety loophole ends today." He said that unqualified foreign drivers will no longer be able to obtain a license to operate 80,000-pound big rigs. Under the rule, foreign drivers who have not undergone consular and interagency screenings will be unable to obtain a CDL. From enforcing English language standards to holding fraudulent carriers accountable, we will continue to attack this crisis on our roads head on. How the heck can Florida not be allowed to sue? Yeah, it is a DEI license. How could they not be allowed to sue? This was absolute failure. It caused the problem in Florida, and they should have that right. I mean, I don't care what state it is. That's not right. Well, yeah. I mean, it's like the loophole, and I remember way back when they were talking about as part of NAFTA. Was it NAFTA? They were talking about licensing and giving approval for truckers coming out of Mexico and potentially other nations, but certainly those, because Mexico is a part of that they could drive their trucks on the highways of America. I said, bad idea. At that, they should have to drop off that load and be picked up by, carriers here. But they're like, I mean, who gets to do that? I mean, it's one thing to drive a car and be a tourist and everything, but you're driving 80,000-pound loads. We don't, there has to be some sort of mechanism of what they know, how they know, I mean, how do they can they pass a DOT physical? I mean, there's a lot of questions. I don't know the ins and outs of it. And there may have been some mechanisms built in, and it's not anything against really good drivers. Good drivers can come in from anywhere. But I know that the truckers in America were very upset about this because they said the standards were lower, the ability was lower, and it was going to cause a lot of problems. And I know we have a trucker shortage, and I know that's played in. They've addressed some of it because they're really pushing to get these kids in. In fact, I ran into one here. I mentioned that on air that he said he wanted to drive the big rigs after he gets out of high school. That was what he wanted to do. Kids still do want to drive truck, and the pay is not bad. The pay has went up, and a lot of times the company will pay for the schooling. You just agree to stay with them for a certain amount of time, or you have to pay that money back. I think that's 2 years or something like that. That's standard reason. And you got a job waiting on you when you get out of school. It's a great job coming out of high school, requiring only 6 or 8 weeks maximum of training. So it's not that difficult anyway. And these jacklegs could not even read the signs. I mean, I think it's pretty evident. A lot of times, bad drivers can come in all, certainly, but we do see people that do not understand traffic laws. And that's a lot of people. I get it, but it is a lot of people that they just don't understand. They come from a different place. They've never driven here, and they just don't have a full command of what it's about. And so, they pull them over. The police, they can't communicate with them. They have to get some way. I mean, maybe they're using technology now where you can talk to text or all that. A lot of times they have to get somebody, they have to find out what he talks and then get somebody to come in and, translate what's going on. So huge problem. I stand with Thomas and Alito on this. That should not be really, this should not be a partisan issue. I'm just shocked that they didn't let Florida have some sort of recourse here to at least argue the point before the court. I mean, it stinks. You're licensing somebody in your state who can't pass a normal licensing, but gets a CDL and drives that rig into your state and, kills people. I mean, something's got to happen. I mean, that's not right, and I applaud Florida for doing it. That's why we should have. This is such a big issue. And if I don't know, maybe I'm leery about anything federalized, but if you're going to drive a truck across state lines, across the whole United States, which a lot of them do, maybe that should be just a federal thing, and the state should stay out of it. I mean, we're going to need to raise the standard here. If you never leave the state borders, maybe you just leave it state. I don't know. There's federal highways though. I don't know what the answer is there, but I do know this: we need to make sure they're capable. That's it. Anything. I work in training. Before you turn somebody loose, you got to know that they can do what you say they do. And I would like to see. She'll never see it. I'd like to see what the test was. How did he get that? What did the test look like? I mean, something's fishy. If you can't pass the other one, how'd you pass a CDL test? Come on. That don't make sense. Anyway, that's PNN News for tonight. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back to sports, bottom of the hour, and then we'll wrap it up for tonight and see you in the morning. Thanks for watching Wolf Nation Network. More to come. And we'll be spreading our wings a little bit more. All the podcasts are still there. They're just a part of the network, which is Wolf Nation. We're more than one podcast, and we're more than a podcast. That's not being said with any kind of ego. It's just that we're a network of many different entities, and we have finally umbrella all that under this title, Wolf Nation Network. And so we thank you for your support. Give us a like, follow, share, on whatever you're watching, and stay tuned. We thank you. God bless you. Have a great rest of your night. If you can come back with sports, that'd be great. We won't be on too long. We're going to update a few things. And don't forget, Thursday night, Brother Cook will be here, at least in spirit. And we're going to talk a little fantasy football as well. So we'll talk NFL, Fantasy League, our league that we're having here at the podcast. I mean, Cook has ran for years. And an opportunity for you to be a part of. If you like Brusky, there's an opportunity. You can be a part of a fantasy football league at the Wolf Nation Network. Anyway, see ya.
Patriot Nation News. PNN. Morning breaks, we turn it on. Top stories coming fast and strong. From the map to your front door, what matters most